know, Tom Donahue is the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm on their mailing. I'm on everybody's mailing list. What can I say? And, you know, telling me about how I need to call my member of Congress because important legislation is coming up, businesses need more tax breaks and we got to get rid of these welfare folks. And, and you can't extend unemployment benefits. That's going to make America less competitive. And why don't we reduce the minimum, do away with the minimum wage? And, after all, people in China work for $2 an hour. These are not the specific points that Tom Donahue makes in his emails to me, but they are my interpretation of them. Let's put, for the record. But they're lobbying the people. They've got this thing. You can join you can join the chamber for free and basically get their emails and their propaganda. So, the whole thing here, President Obama addressed this right-wing trade association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is mostly made up of international corporations, by the way, not just American corporations, and said, get in the game. You guys are sitting on over $2 trillion. That's $2,000 billion in cash. Why not spend some of that money to build some factories here in the United States? Why not build that? These are my words, not his. He just said get in the game. But, obviously, why not pay your workers a decent decent wage so that they'll go out and buy things which will create demand, which will stimulate the economy? Well, they're not going to do that. This is the futility of this. On the board of directors, this is from the Center for American Progress, this Think Progress blog. On the board of directors of the U.S. Chamber, Navistar CEO Daniel Eustian, he raised his pay 27% last year. Do you think he could do that? To $8.43 million. Company is doing very well, by the way. Thank you very much. Navistar, however, in Springfield, Ohio, laid off 250 workers from their truck assembly plant. At their plant in Arkansas, they laid off 477 people in 2009 after letting 300 workers go in 2008. This is a major military contractor, by the way. They're getting your tax dollars to build tanks and things or whatever they're building that goes off to Afghanistan and Iraq. And they opened a new factory last year. This is the good news. They opened this company, President Obama said, get in the game. This company that laid off 300 workers in 2008 to 477 in Arkansas, just laid off 250 people in Springfield in their truck assembly plant. They opened a new factory. Great news, right? In Mexico. Okay. It's in Mexico, yeah. AT&T CEO Randolph Stevenson was awarded a compensation package valued at $20.3 million. His pay went up 35% from 2008. Not bad work if you can get it. His pension is worth $31 million. That's the money that he gets for the rest of his life after he retires. At the same time, what has AT&T done with all this cash that they can afford to pay this guy millions and millions of dollars? They've knocked off 16,000 jobs since the recession hit. But they are enjoying record profits, although they just announced hundreds of layoffs in Kansas, 96 in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, 150 in Connecticut, 525 technicians in California, 140 jobs in Oklahoma. And then there's what we used to call John Deere. Now it's Deere & Company. Samuel Allen, the CEO and chairman, he took a 300% pay increase, 2009 to 2010. 300%, 3 times the size of his pay in 2009. He was paid $12.29 million in 2010. They have record profits. This is that money Obama's talking about, that $2 trillion that corporate America's sitting on. He's saying, spend some of it in this country. Record profits. And Deere has just killed 367 jobs in East Moline, Illinois, 325 in Iowa, 89 jobs in North Dakota. Health insurance company WellPoint's on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Angela Braley, her pay went up 51%. How'd you like to get a 51% pay raise in 2008 to $13.1 million? I'm sorry, in 2009. 2008, she only made $8.7. Now it's 13.1. At the same time, Where'd that money come from? To pay her all that money? Well, they laid off 1,500 people across the world, across the country. 136 jobs in Missouri, 111 in Wisconsin, just recently, following the first round of layoffs. Notably, during this same period, Think Progress notes, WellPoint's trade association secretly transferred $86 million to the Chamber of Commerce to fight health care reform. So you talk about Daniel walking into the lion's den. Here is President Barack Obama walking into, just this one company threw $86 million into the chamber and said, here, use this to take out Democratic politicians. Use this to lobby. Use this to pay women to sleep with John Boehner. Whatever. I don't know if it was actually used for that. That's apparently the paper industry. But in any case. Meanwhile, while they're talking about free enterprise is so important, it was the chamber who was demanding bailouts for its bank members, AIG, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. Billions in tax, trillions actually, if you look at it seriously, in taxpayer money for its defense contract members. They wanted taxpayer money for cleaning up the BP oil spill. They want tax cuts for their millionaire executives. They're gung-ho for unfettered free trade deals. And tragically, this was the subtext of Obama's speech to the chamber was, help me pass the U.S.-South Korea trade deal so that they can eat our lunch even worse than we already are, and you guys can move more jobs to South Korea, I guess. So, it was asked earlier, why is Obama kowtowing to these guys? Because of the Supreme Court, they have the power to destroy him in 2012.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
And America drifts farther and farther away from democracy and closer to oligopoly with our oligarchs and kleptocracy with our chiefs.